Hello everyone, this is Manny Ninja speaking. We're going to look at a bootleg breakdown extra episode here, namely because I actually picked up a series, or an entire set I should say, of the Banpresto Dragon Ball WCF Historical Characters Volume 1 here. But mind you, these are all bootlegs, as you can kind of guess from the boxes, missing all the logos of Banpresto as well as Crane King. So the boxes themselves shipped in everything shipped in a mailer to say the boxes are all flattened out, and this little bag here has all the actual figures themselves, which we're going to be looking at one after the other in the order that they would have originally appeared in the set. So, therefore, we're starting with Son Goku here. Now, in terms of the wrap there, this is kind of what you might expect to see in the real one. In fact, basically, the baggie itself is almost the exact same as what the real one, so I'm leading to believe that this was probably done in a similar factory setup. But, curiously enough, although the detailing in the figure tends to be, it's looking pretty decent, there's some definite issues in terms of the molding itself. It's a little more obvious on Nimbus in this case. There's a lot more seam lines kind of going all over the place. And little kind of nitpicky issues that I have here with the casting. Yeah, that's the more obvious part on Nimbus itself, that one little cross section. And notably, there's a bit of issues with the paint finish here and there, like around the sleeves and stuff. But what I'm noticing particularly is all the colors are noticeably off. Even compared to the boxes themselves, which they're definitely reprints because they're versions without logo, but everything here is a lot ruddier. It's more noticeable on the skin tones especially, I find, right now. But we're going to definitely pick that up a little more later. In terms of the base of the stands themselves, I'm actually a little surprised to see this has copyright information still on there. I believe Banpresto 2015, made in China, DB marker on there. So that seems to be, maybe that's actually taken straight out of the factory itself, which I can't say the same about the actual stick used in the base here. It's got a little bit of a flashing issue, this extra plastic that I have to cut off with the little clippers there. But once you do that, it actually fits on there just fine, and similarly enough, it does fit pretty well in terms of how Goku fits on the base there, so that's actually not half bad. In terms of the decals on the face, they're pretty simplistic, but they do the job on there. It does have a fairly reasonable fit, and in terms of presentation, it's not a perfect representation of what the real one looks like by any means, but it's not half bad. It's workable. It's serviceable, if you will. So that's going to be Son Goku on that one. Yeah, definitely it's a nice good fit. Looks like it's fitting like how it's supposed to in there. Another thing with the power pole end is a little bent, but otherwise we're still doing pretty good here. Let's take a look at Bulma in this case, and here the color fluctuation is a lot more noticeable, because that is, well, Bulma has a tan there, for lack of a better term there. It's even ranging on skin, maybe like a sunburn or something, because the skin tone is definitely much redder than it should be, which is a bit weird to say the least. And even in terms of the hair, also the hair color is a tad off. It doesn't quite match the green tone you normally associate with this character. In fact, it's actually closer to the eye color in this case, which, while the eye decals are right or pretty good in terms of detailing there, the actual eye color itself is also a little bit off. And the hair, actually no, I'd say the hair does fit pretty well on the head compared to what it is on there. You can even see some separation on the background box representing what the real figure kind of looks like, but the hair color is definitely off, so that needs some touch up. Going on to the rest of the dress in this case, the decals, both Bulma on the front and 97 on the back, seem to be pretty well handled on there, so they're nice clean attachments or decals. The paint on the belt does need a little bit of work, which I'm going to make a little more apparent in the next little video snippet here, because on the belt itself, where it's reaching the holster, it doesn't actually go all the way behind here. You can still see a bit of the pink drips right behind the holster itself because the paint didn't reach that far. And in terms of the gloves and the Dragon Ball, the Dragon Radar, it's not bad assembly there, it's not bad of a paint job. Probably could use a little more detail, but at this scale, understandably it is a little hard to do. Now, as for how Bulma actually goes to understand, the short answer is, at least on my copy, she doesn't. The actual peg on the back of her dress is too small for the casted peg, which is definitely a recast in this case, to actually fit in. So either I need to widen the peg on Bulma's back there, or I need to sand down the peg so it will actually fit, because right now it doesn't work. Moving on to the next figure of the set, Master Roshi is looking a little rough, I'm being quite honest on there. In fact, I'd actually say so far he's easily the worst one I have in this particular set. So as we get the plastic open here, you can kind of see what I mean. Because where I was mentioning the colors were rough on all these ones, they were all off with a reddish tone or a reddish hue or something like that. Master Roshi suffers the worst from that in this case. They're visibly off colors in this case. The beard especially is like a kind of a middish bluish gray in this case, which is totally off. And by the way, that's actually the same color he has on the tooth, that's visible tooth in his mouth. So that's completely off in this case. His shirt is completely the wrong color. It's just a much darker kind of orangey tone on there. His glasses are a notably different color. The frame itself is a darker red. The glass decal, so to speak, is also off kilter in this case. Even his cane itself is actually a much darker tone compared to what the actual retail release, much less what's on the box, even on the bootleg here. So in terms of that, yeah, there's a lot of things that could be fixed on Roshi here. The only thing I will say is, at least in terms of the detail of the casting, it seems to retain most of the detail in there just fine, and he does fit on his stand well enough, with no real extra wiggle work or force that needs to be put on there. So that's something, but really in general, if there's a figure I'd consider repainting on this one, definitely Roshi is going to be it. Moving on, in terms of color, I'd say Krillin here didn't exactly fare much better. It's better than Roshi, but there's definitely a lot of darker reddish colors on his color scheme compared to what the actual figure is going to be, which is a pity, because in terms of his decals on there, like the markings on his forehead, his eyebrows and eyes themselves, they're actually done impeccably well. I'd say they're probably close, if not in a dead ringer, for what the real figure has. They're just nice sharp decals. But then we get on the paint of his actual uniform there, then it starts getting a little rough. There's some kind of a paint rub, or kind of missing paint, I should say, on there. The gi colors, well, let's bring it up close. The gi colors are definitely off. Mind you, even on the real one, they're slightly darker than what they are in package, but here it's just self-evident that the colors don't match. And in terms of, can we get him on his stand for Krillin? The answer is no, all around. As you can kind of see, we're having the same issue we had with Bulma in this case, namely the actual opening on the back of the figure for Krillin here is just too small in order to fit the peg. Now, in terms of the actual peg into the stand itself, that one does fit just fine. So, much like Bulma, I'm either going to need to modify the peg or increase the size of the opening in order to get that working. But, yeah, it doesn't work off the bat. Alright, that makes 4 figures down. We're moving on to number 5 in the set here, which is Yamcha with Puar over here. And even just taking a look in the plastic itself, as I'm trying to struggle to get this open with scissors here, you can kind of tell a lot of the same issues tend to keep popping up here. There's some definite molding, casting issues on here. And the colors are definitely off. The skin tone, which is to be expected at this point, it seems to be just a common thing with this whole run-up here. Maybe it's just because of what they were using in terms of the plastic or factory rejects, whatever they used to cast it. Just the colors and the skin tone are off. But also the paintwork here is a little more spotty, actually, than what I'd say on the other ones. While the emblem itself looks fine, just when you look around the actual edges there, you can see the skin color just peeking through there around the edges, probably because the paintwork couldn't quite reach the little nooks and crannies there, which is a bit disappointing, unfortunately. There's definitely some cleanup that needs to be done in terms of the casting. I just literally flicked the little excess piece of flashing off there, and Puar around his left ear, his right ear could use some cleanup too. And just general cleanup on the edges would help a lot. And definitely cleanup on the paintwork could do a lot. That's a little bit of Puar's paint job that's on Yamcha's hair there. And especially on the boots is most noticeable. You can just see kind of paint rub or excess paint that should be on other parts of the body just kind of sneak up on there, like on the bottom of the shoe there, which is surprisingly nondescript actually. Maybe there was supposed to be some detail, but it just got lost in the casting. And yeah, no, Yamcha, in terms of the quality of the sculpt, he's the roughest, I'd say, actually. In terms of now, we're going to look at his stand here. Can he fit on his stand? And, well, I can't even get the stand to fit in there properly. This one's actually much worse casting. You can even see some kind of caught air bubbles inside there. And, of course, it doesn't fit on Yamcha. So, This particular stand needs work all around, which is a bit disappointing. Now, that leaves us with Tao Popeye here, which is going to be the last figure in this particular set here. And thankfully enough, in terms of a paint job, there's not much to mess up here, just because he's fairly uniform in terms of his colors. I'd say, if anything, the details on his head are actually handled pretty nice there, although there's some definite rough casting there on the jawline there. And I was originally thinking that the pillar he's on looked a little odd because you can definitely see all the casting things at the end. But then I actually went and compared to photos of the real issue, and it turns out those are there too, so I guess that's at least accurate. That's a good little Kill You logo on the back there. His insignia on the front of his shirt is perfectly well handled, and actually, in terms of detailing overall, aside from that little rough bit around his jawline there, which is actually surprisingly sharp for what it is, I'd say he's actually fairly well handled. He's actually one of my favorite ones out of the set here. Now, in terms of how well he goes on his stand, it's handled in the same way they handled Goku's stand on there, where he's balancing on top, and it's a snug fit, but he fits on there just fine. So he's actually one of the better figures out of this set. Not gonna lie, in terms of paint work and color pick in general, these figures are a tad rough around the edges, but the sculpts themselves aren't half bad. I'm kind of wondering, folks, would anybody be interested in seeing me try to give these things a bit of a paint facelift? If so, leave a comment below, and catch you all later.